All right. ¿Cómo están todos? Hola, hola. Welcome to the American Dream, Despite It All, Al Grano. I'm your host, Nora Vargas, and I'm so honored to share this space with you. You know, we're living in really challenging times around the world and right here at home. We're fighting for our democracy, and the rights that we thought were secure are just being chipped away. Injustices pile up, and for many of us, it feels heavy, exhausting even. So, how do we keep fighting for our democracy, for our families and our communities while also fighting for ourselves? How do we rewrite the story that rest is weakness and that taking care of ourselves is actually part of the work? That is why I created this podcast to get to al grano, to have real talk about what it means to live the American dream, to not just survive, but thrive with corazon and grit despite it all. So, the first stop, right? The first part of all of this. For me, it began long before any title or office. I'm the firstborn, and if you have ever met my sisters and my brother, they will tell everybody that I'm the oldest. They're very proud of that. But being the firstborn comes with its own kind of pressures, a mix of your parents' expectations, but also the pressures that you put on yourself. I've talked to many of friends who are the first in their family, and for the majority of us, it comes with a heightened sense of responsibility. It's not just a burden or a cross you bear, no hay que ser tan exagerados, but you really are a bit of like a guinea pig, right? And so you have to figure things out. You have to set the example. And then when you make mistakes, it's like a really big deal. And somehow you have to keep going and make it look easy no matter what. And I think that as a Latina, the pressure is even greater because it's not just your parents, it's the whole family. Los tíos, los primos, los abuelos, everybody has an opinion. Everybody's watching, and somehow you're carrying their hopes too. So let's be honest. Um, you can be upset about it or you can be mad about it, but in the end, sometimes it can be a lot. So you grew up learning that your success isn't just yours, it's for all of us. And you know, the truth is that it's really beautiful, but it can also be very heavy. But it also, I think, prepares you to be a little bit of a fearless person. Truth be told, I was, you may believe it or not, a little bit of a rebel without a cause, una rebelde sin causa. Y mi pobre madre sometimes decía, ¿qué hago contigo, right? But the truth is that for me, although I would argue that my cause was really to push the limits, to see what was out there, it was a mix of responsibility and a desire to achieve while also wanting to do things my way. It was really that como compromiso que yo tenía con mi familia, right? I was the first one in my family to go to school in the United States, the first one to go away to college. And honestly, leaving home wasn't just about earning a degree. It was about navigating two cultures, two languages, and two systems. If you heard me speak before, I talked about how I would do all of my homework in Spanish. Like I would read it in English, write the essays in Spanish, and then translate them into English. Imagínate, I was exhausted. But, you know, it taught me a lot. It taught me to survive. It taught me to, you know, to have that grit, to be able to keep moving forward. But it also meant that I had to learn to be comfortable in spaces where sometimes I didn't always see people who looked like me or sounded like me. And it was tough sometimes, right? But there were moments, honestly, that I doubted myself, moments that I felt like I didn't belong. Everything from, you know, writing in English to being able to give a speech and making sure that I use the right words. And in those moments, I could always hear my dad's voice. He always said, remember, the eye of the tiger, Norita. And yes, that's the Rocky Balboa theme. And in retrospect, I realized that what he really meant, it wasn't just about toughness and it was about discipline, right? Not just about being tough. It was discipline, about focus, about giving it your all. And no matter how hard the climb felt, right? You're running up those stairs. It really was about making sure that you focused and that you had that discipline to move forward. He also had another saying donde decía, Norita, como los caballos de carrera, tú enfócate y solo hacia adelante. He explained that racehorses wore blinkers so that they don't get distracted and that they couldn't see what was happening on their side, all that noise, that you only focused on what was ahead. And he reminded me always Norita, es importante. Prepárate, enfócate y siempre mantén los pies en la tierra. Always, always, always be prepared, focus, and always be grounded. There's always going to be someone who's smarter than you and someone who knows less than you. But the important part is that you give it your all. Siempre va a haber alguien que sabe más que tú. A veces vas a ser tú mejor que otros, pero lo importante es que tú siempre des lo mejor de ti. And I think it was a way of saying, like, make sure that you stay humble, you stay ready, and you run your race with purpose. You're not doing things for other people, you're doing it for yourself. And I think as the first in my family and the first in so many roles, whether it was in public office or in an executive role or wherever I was, I think that's what has always grounded me and what I really wanted to share, because the truth be told, I've been known, up until this day, and I remember, like before speeches, to put on the Rocky theme when I'm having one of those what the F days, right? Those moments when you're like, ¿Qué pasó? What the heck? Kind of like it's a way that I ground myself to remind me that I've got this, that when things seem tough, when I don't know, that I just have to think about it and really be able to move forward. So that, yes, I do still have the Rocky theme in my hype list. And, just an added note, I think everybody should have a hype list. That list of songs that lift you up, that remind you who you are and get you ready to take on the world. And, people who are speakers and panelists tell you, what is your, like a fighter, when your boxer is about to go on the ring, or your MMA folks, and they have these great songs, but I think you have to figure out what it is for you, right? That actually excites you and gets you there. And so it's what I've done. And for me, I think about being at the University of San Francisco, where I went to undergrad, and where I started connecting the dots for myself, and how different it was from living in La Frontera to now living in San Francisco, Northern California, very different world. And I began to really understand that what I love to do and the work that I was doing was called something social justice. And it really taught me what it meant to lead with purpose, to really own your voice, to open doors for others. And honestly, I didn't, it was never my goal to be the first at anything. I mean, I was the firstborn, but it was never my goal to, cuando sea grande, I'm going to be the first county supervisor. I didn't even, I would have never in my wildest dreams thought about that role, right? Or I'm going to be the first Latina on CalSTRS, the California Teacher Retirement Board, or, a whole list of names of organizations, public entities where I have served. But I think, what guided me was that I always knew that I just wanted to make a difference. It was always about fairness and what was just. And that's what fueled me, right? And so to me, being the first was something that opened a lot of doors for me. And I believe that because I had so much responsibility when I was growing up as the first, I think it helped me manage all these spaces. And when I would walk in, I would be like, oh my God, I'm like the first one here. Or I wasn't thinking about making history, but once I was there, I understood the responsibility that came with it. And so being La Primera means walking into rooms where no one expects you and deciding to stay anyway, right? You've heard the saying, like, if there's no seat at the table, you bring your own chair. Well, it happened to me a lot. And so you find your allies, right? And it means that you have to learn a system that wasn't built for you or for you, but you still want to transform it. And so that being the first allows you really to think about what can you do to make sure that you're opening spaces for others as well. So it's not easy, but it's worth it, because every first we achieve becomes a roadmap of success for someone else. So I want you to take a moment. Where have you been the first? I think it's important to think about the spaces that we've been able to manage and where we've been. And remember that feeling in your body, the nerves, the pride, the glow. And that's the power that we need to bring with us wherever we go. And when we are the first, although it could be a little scary sometimes, it could also be very empowering because we're not only um, making a difference, but we're also changing things for others. And so that to me is where the power lies. That to me is where the excitement is. And, I often say to folks, I may be the first, but never the last. And that is something that I, um, you know, really, really focus on. So excited about what the opportunities are and being able to rewrite what it means to do what we do every day. And so as we think about, our no manches moment, because let's be real, being the first also comes with a whole lot of double standards. No manches apparently, confidence has a gender. Men get called leaders and we get called bossy or too much. I was told I was intimidating. I was too assertive. And when I speak up, I'm too aggressive. But there was this sort of idea that if I stayed quiet, I wasn't ready. And when you're the first, you make a mistake and it becomes a headline. But when other people do it, it becomes a learning experience. And so I'm not sharing this to say like, oh, woe is me or woe is anybody who's the first one. But I think it's important to find spaces where as you're figuring it along the way, you're also thinking about what that looks like for others, right? I often talk about like when you're the first, it's like you're building the plane while you're flying it. And there really is no roadmap and no playbook. So you use your instincts and you have to have a lot of grit. And as the first one in our families, we don't always have a tia to call or a parent who's been through it before. And honestly, like when I first became an executive, I had no idea I could hire a coach. I didn't even know what that meant, right? And so there's no one to ask, how did you handle this? Because you're the one living it for the first time. You're the example, you're the experiment. So it's not always what people want to hear, but over the years I've learned that following my intuition is really, really important. And it's not some sort of like, gushy mushy thing, but I really do believe that if you really are grounded and you think about how a situation is making you feel and the impact that it's having, and it's really important to follow that intuition or your gut, as they say. And so it's not about being stubborn. It's really knowing about when things feel right, and even if it doesn't make sense to others, right? So you can see that as you get more pressure, or you can see it as an opportunity to own your power. But what I've learned through the years is that being real, being authentic, that's your superpower. And I know that being authentic is used a lot by folks, but when you trust yourself enough to show up fully and you spend time knowing yourself more and more, you give other permissions to people to, you give other people the permission to do the same. And so for me, when you turn that uncertainty into courage and that courage becomes contagious, is I really, really think really important. So I wanted to, for this particular piece, talk about El Conejo Malo, right? O sea, Bad Bunny. And he's been on SNL. He just finished his residencia. I have a lot of friends who went to see him. It's so amazing. I had major FOMO. But, when he announced that he was doing the Super Bowl halftime a couple of weeks ago, and my WhatsApp was blowing up. No manches, right? And people were so excited, especially because of the narrative that we're living in right now in America. But what I think is fascinating about him and this concept of being el primero is that he actually really stays true to himself. And you can say, bueno, pues sí, tiene mucho dinero, y hace lo que quiere, and he has a following. No. He didn't, right? He didn't for a long time. And so he really has stayed authentic to himself, representing the language or the culture, the rhythm, and doing it like really on the biggest stage in the world. And, it brought me a lot of joy to watch all these memes of non-Latinos trying to sing in Spanish and dance and cantando Titi me preguntó and bailando and getting ready for the Super Bowl. And I laughed at first, but then I thought, my God, this man has the whole world moving to a beat that was born in places people used to ignore. So when they tried to change him, he didn't back down. He doubled down. He didn't wait for permission to be himself. But the cool thing about it, right? Remember, he has worked on his English as well. So he's been able to assimilate to be able to say, okay, all right, I'll do this part, but I'm not going to lose who I am. And I think that's the beauty of being la primera o el primero. It's not waiting for the world to be ready for you. It's about showing up anyway and leading with that authenticity and letting your truth be your power. And I think that's just amazing, and it's really a gift if we own it and we empower ourselves to be able to do this. So because when you're the first, you may not fit the mold, you actually become the mold. And so for our reflection and our el grano de oro de hoy, I really want us to think about what those golden nuggets are. Being la primera or el primero isn't about being perfect. It isn't about being, it's really about being present. It's about showing up with courage and intention. And even when you don't have all the answers, I think you always must carry just 3 truths with you, right? You celebrate your wins loudly. Don't downplay your brilliance, right? Find your people, your advisory board members, your mentors, your sisters, your comadres, your family, people who remind you that you're not alone. ¿Quiénes son tus cheerleaders? Find them and you may not see them all the time, pero que te manden un text or something that says, hey, I'm so proud of you. You're doing good. And ¿cómo estás? And how can I help you? And when they tell you no, you listen to your own yes. That's the self-determination. That's the agency that you need to be able to break down barriers and to really create the American dream that you want for yourself and your family. And because in the end, the goal isn't just to be the first, is to make sure you're not the last, right? And as we carry the weight so the next generation can carry freedom, that's how we turn survival into legacy. I want you to share your story with me. Use the hashtag #MyGlowEra. Tell me, where have you been the first? And remember, you don't need permission to find. You don't need any permission to shine. This is your American dream with corazón and grit. Despite it all, this is your glow era.